I am a patriot. I love our country. I am a strong and intelligent woman of color, and I have dedicated almost my entire adult life to protecting the safety, security, and the freedom of all Americans in this country. It was the attacks on 9/11.
It was a regular day on daytime television, or at least that's what everyone thought. The audience shuffled in, the lights came up, and the usual chatter filled the studio. But then she walked in. Shoulders squared, eyes sharp, and a calm confidence that could cut through steel. This wasn't the entrance of a nervous guest hoping for a few polite laughs. This was the entrance of someone ready for battle. Tulsi Gabbard took her seat across from Joy Behar, and from the very first second, you could feel the air shift. This wasn't small talk anymore. Tulsi wasn't there to smile for the cameras or dodge questions like a polished politician. She introduced herself with fire, a patriot, a woman of color, a soldier who had dedicated nearly her entire adult life to protecting America's safety and freedom. She tied her story back to September 11th, the day that pushed her to put on a uniform and step into the battlefield.
Ran for Congress.
We actually have the clip of Hillary Clinton, just to put this in context of what we're talking about. Let's take a look at that.
I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians. They have a bunch of, sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far. And that's assuming Jill Stein will give it up, which she might not, because she's also a Russian asset.
So really? I mean, this is outrageous. This is outrageous and offensive on so many levels. I've served as a member of Congress now for almost 7 years, receiving high-level national security and intelligence briefings, serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Armed Services Committee, the Homeland Security Committee, working to ensure the safety and security of the people of this country. This is why I'm running for president, to continue that commitment of service.
So are you surprised, though, that when people see bots and things and all the things that we've sort of been seeing heading your way, that people have these questions? Because she's not the only one. Hillary, I don't think, is the only one. So what she's saying is she feels they are grooming you. You're saying nobody's grooming me. I'm doing what I'm doing because I'm a soldier and a patriot.
It's offensive to me as a soldier, as an American, as a member of Congress, as a veteran, and frankly, as a woman, to be so demeaned in such a way.
But you called her the personification of rock.
So demeaned
She's a woman
in such
too.
a way. Well, I'm pointing to the fact that she has continued this legacy of being the world's police around the world, that has waged wars costing the lives of thousands of my brothers and sisters in uniform. I'm speaking out against that, and
What's
to
your
change
evidence to that?
to change.
Well,
Are you serious?
Let's hear it.
Are you serious?
Let's hear it.
I served in the war
Not
in
you,
Iraq.
her. You're saying that she's
exactly.
she's a
I served
warmonger. How do
in
you
the
come
war
up with
in
that?
Iraq
Yeah.
that she championed. She championed a regime change war in
Did
Libya.
you not believe in that war?
I believe the lies that were told to us.
But this wasn't about a resume. This was about identity and power. She made it clear. She wasn't just another politician on the couch. She was a veteran, a fighter, and someone who refused to be smeared. The tension was thick, and the audience leaned in, sensing that something explosive was about to unfold. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now, let's continue. Joy Behar leaned forward with that familiar smirk, the one viewers had seen countless times when she was about to throw a jab. She thought she had her moment. With a voice dripping in performative innocence, Joy asked about Tulsi's so-called ties to foreign interests, even throwing out names like Richard Spencer and pointing to Tulsi's repeated appearances on Tucker Carlson's show. It was a classic setup: paint the guest into a corner, force them to defend themselves, and keep the upper hand. But this time, it didn't land. Tulsi didn't flinch. She didn't offer a politician's smile or a carefully crafted talking point. Instead, she stared straight into Joy's eyes, calm but unyielding, and dismantled the accusation before it had time to stick. These weren't just cheap shots. She said they were recycled innuendos, slanders that had been spread before, most famously by Hillary Clinton.
anything other than the fact
Can I
Hillary,
say
let me just close this out, that Hillary Clinton throughout her career has led with a foreign policy of interventionism and being the world's police, going and toppling dictators in other countries that has caused such destruction and loss of life. I'm against that. I'm running for president to change that. Rather than actually debate me on the issues, she and others are resorting to these smear tactic campaigns, seeking to undermine me, smear my character, and sending a message to anyone who dissents.
The audience could sense the shift. Joy had expected a dance, maybe a little sparring, but what she got instead was a wall of certainty, a refusal to play the game. Tulsi wasn't dodging. She was confronting. She reminded everyone in that studio and everyone watching at home that she wasn't going to let false accusations define her. The smile slipped from Joy's face just a little, and that was the first crack in the armor. Tulsi had made it clear. She wasn't there to be a prop for daytime TV. She was there to fight back. The temperature on set rose fast. Joy tried to double down, bringing up Clinton's past comments and repeating the old line that Tulsi was somehow favored by Russia. But Tulsi's response cut deeper than anyone expected. With her voice steady, she reminded Joy and the entire audience why she had joined the military in the first place. After the attacks on September 11th, she enlisted. She wasn't sitting in a Manhattan studio reading cue cards, she was overseas, twice deployed to the Middle East, where every day meant life or death. And then came the line that froze the entire studio. Without raising her voice, Tulsi looked straight at Joy and said, "You're either ignorant or just willfully stupid."
We're getting a little bit far ahead of ourselves, but Franklin Graham finds you refreshing. He doesn't find me refreshing. Richard Spencer, the white nationalist leader, says he could vote for you.
Joy, this is why
you're on
I'm
Tucker
here.
Carlson at least 10 times. Why don't you go on Chris Wallace's show?
This is why I'm here, because you and other people continue to spread these innuendos that have nothing to do with who I am.
Well, Hillary
that have
Clinton
nothing to
started
do
it,
with
and then
who
you
I
shot
am.
back at her, boy. You called her the queen of warmongers.
You double down, unfortunately, you double down on the baseless accusations that she made that strikes at the core of who I am. I'm a soldier. Because of the attacks on 9/11, I enlisted in the military to go after and defeat and destroy the evil that visited us on that day. I've served now for over 16 years, deployed twice to the Middle East during the height of the war, where every single day I saw firsthand the terribly high human cost.
Silence. The kind of silence that tells you something unforgettable has just happened. You could even hear someone in the audience whisper, stunned that she actually said it out loud. Joy blinked hard, caught off guard. For a woman who prided herself on quick wit and sharp comebacks, suddenly there was nothing. The cards in her hands seemed useless, her trademark smirk slipping. Tulsi wasn't giving her the space to recover. She pressed forward, pointing out that Joy pretended to care about truth while only peddling soundbites written for clicks. In that moment, Joy wasn't the powerful host. She was the target. And Tulsi had landed the first devastating blow. The studio felt like it had tilted. Joy tried to regain footing, fumbling through her notes as if a lifeline might be hidden in the cards. But Tulsi wasn't letting up. She leaned in, calm and surgical, and accused Joy of parroting narratives instead of questioning them, of manufacturing drama instead of challenging power. The words hit like a hammer. For the first time in years, Joy had no comeback. Her mouth opened, then closed, like she wanted to fight back but couldn't find the words. The audience felt the tension and erupted. Some gasped, others clapped, and a ripple of energy filled the room. Even the co-hosts glanced at each other, unsure if they should step in or let this train keep barreling down the track. The producers hesitated too. Do they cut to commercial or risk letting this go viral in real time? Joy tried her signature laugh, that dry little chuckle she often used when cornered. But it sounded empty, hollow. She muttered, "I'm just asking questions." Tulsi didn't hesitate. "No, you're making accusations." That shut down whatever defense Joy was reaching for. The balance of power had flipped. The woman who usually owned the stage suddenly looked small at her own table. Tulsi had taken control, and the audience was fully locked on her side. This was no longer an interview, it was a dismantling, and Joy was the one being dismantled. The momentum was unstoppable now. Tulsi wasn't raising her voice, but every word landed like a direct strike.
I do want to ask you something else. Kamala Harris said recently that her race and gender are, quote, the elephant in the room, and that many still question if America is ready for a woman, and specifically a woman of color, to be president. And you're also a woman of color.
Yeah.
Is that, you feel, been a problem for you? Do you agree with her?
No, I think the American people are ready for a president that will put people ahead of politics, put people ahead of profits.
Then why is she saying that, you think?
You have to ask Kamala that. I can't speak to why she's saying that. But what I've seen in our travels across New Hampshire, we just came from New Hampshire yesterday, across the early states, we have some New Hampshire people here, is we are building a code to bring about the systemic change we need to see to take our government back from the rich and powerful who control it and make it so our government is true.
She reminded Joy of the insult that had been thrown at her before the label of being a useful idiot for Russia. For Tulsi, a combat veteran who had worn the uniform and bled alongside fellow soldiers, this wasn't just a cheap line. It was a slur against her service, her integrity, her entire life's work. "You've never served anything except ratings and your own ego," Tulsi said sharply, and the audience gasped loud enough to shake the room. Joy's face froze, her hands tightening around the cards as if they could shield her. Even her co-hosts sat in silence, some visibly sweating, knowing that stepping in now meant walking into Tulsi's crossfire. Tulsi kept her voice steady, almost calm, as she laid it all out. She accused Joy of building a career out of smearing people who didn't fit into her echo chamber, of hiding behind the word opinion to excuse lies and slander. "You call it commentary," Tulsi said. "I call it cowardice." Joy tried to counter with freedom of speech, insisting that's what protected her role. But Tulsi's rebuttal came quick. Free speech doesn't give someone the right to destroy reputations with falsehoods. The crowd erupted again, clapping and cheering as Joy's defenses collapsed piece by piece. This wasn't just a clash anymore, it was a reckoning, and Joy was losing it live on her own stage. The tension only thickened when the show rolled a clip of Hillary Clinton accusing Tulsi of being groomed by Russia. The audience watched as Clinton's words played across the screen, but Tulsi wasn't shaken. As soon as the video ended, she fired back, calling the claim outrageous and offensive, not just to her, but to every veteran who had sacrificed in service. She reminded everyone of her record. Nearly 7 years in Congress, countless high-level intelligence briefings, service on the foreign affairs, armed services, and homeland security committees.
Before I ask you the first question, what's happening with the telescope and the stuff?
Oh,
And
gosh.
why-
The challenge is ongoing. The challenge is ongoing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
What is that?
So
Just to explain.
they decided, it was decided that they were going to go on sacred land.
Oh, yeah. I remember this.
And put up a telescope and do all this stuff. And the Hawaiians said, no, you're not going to do that. So it's been a fight. Tulsi's been at the forefront. Yeah. And I try to bring it up, you know,
I remember.
when I can, because it's, I think sacred land is sacred land.
Yeah.
You can't, you know,
Yeah,
you can't
anywhere.
mess with it. So I have to ask you this instead. So we were just talking about EU Ambassador Sondland changing his testimony yesterday, that he had to be refreshed about quid pro quo, and you've been skeptical more than a lot of the Democrats about the impeachment inquiry. Were you surprised by what he did yesterday?
Well, look, the facts are important, and we'll get to that. I want to start with something that I think is also important about facts.
She had built her career on national security and defending Americans, yet here she was being smeared as a traitor. Joy tried to soften it, suggesting that bots and online chatter had raised questions about Tulsi. But Tulsi wasn't buying it. She turned the spotlight back, accusing Joy and Clinton of demeaning her as a soldier, as an American, and as a woman. She pointed directly to Clinton's history of foreign policy failures, blaming her for wars that cost thousands of lives, including her own brothers and sisters in uniform. When Joy attempted to dismiss her critique, Tulsi cut her off with fire. She accused Joy of not truly believing in free speech, of only supporting dialogue when she was the one speaking. The audience didn't know whether to laugh or cheer, so they did both. This wasn't daytime banter anymore. It was a public gutting of one of television's most untouchable figures, and the crowd was eating it up. Joy tried to regroup, but Tulsi wasn't giving her a single inch. She leaned forward, steady and precise, telling Joy, "You've had your turn. Now you're going to listen." The studio went silent. For years, Joy had controlled that table, cutting off guests and tossing out barbs with ease. But now, the roles had reversed. Tulsi went on, saying Joy's work wasn't journalism, it was performance, and not even good performance. Cameras panned awkwardly, producers waved their hands off stage, unsure if they should cut to break. But no one dared pull the plug, because the audience didn't want out. They wanted more. Joy glanced at her co-hosts, desperate for a rescue. None came. They knew the power had shifted, and Tulsi had hijacked the stage. Every accusation Joy had relied on before now looked flimsy, exposed for what it was, talking points and spin. Tulsi hit harder, turning her attention back to Clinton's record. She condemned the interventionist policies that had toppled dictators, caused massive destruction, and led to endless wars. She said this was why she was running for president, to stop the same cycle of lies and smears. But instead of debating the issues, her opponents smeared her character, sending a chilling message: fall in line or be destroyed. Then came the dagger. Tulsi looked at Joy and said, "You act like you're speaking truth to power, but you are the power. You're the establishment voice pretending to be edgy. You're fake." The crowd erupted again, and Joy looked rattled in a way that no makeup or camera angle could hide. Joy's face tightened, the confidence she usually wore like armor now cracked and slipping away. Her eyes darted down at her cue cards, but Tulsi cut in again before she could even find a sentence. "No, see, that's the problem," Tulsi said sharply. "You don't think, you regurgitate. You memorize talking points written by someone else and pretend they're original thoughts." The crowd gasped, then burst into applause, some people even standing. It was brutal, and Joy knew it. She forced a smile, but it looked stiff, almost painful, the kind of smile someone wears when they're trying to pretend they haven't just been humiliated. The redness in her face gave it away. She was shaken. Tulsi didn't ease up. She accused Joy of refusing to evolve, of clinging to the same tired roles and scripts year after year. Then came a pivot. A co-host brought up Kamala Harris, pointing out that Harris had said her race and gender were the elephant in the room in the presidential race. When asked if she agreed, Tulsi shook her head. America, she said, was ready for a president who put people above politics and profits. She told the audience about her travels across New Hampshire, meeting ordinary people who wanted change, who wanted government taken back from the wealthy elite. Her message was clear. The fight wasn't about identity politics, it was about breaking free from those who controlled the system. Meanwhile, Joy sat stiffly in her chair, her hands shaking as she clutched the cue cards like a life raft. The battle wasn't over, but Tulsi had already seized control. Joy tried once more to steady herself, blurting out, "I never called you a traitor." But Tulsi wasn't letting her slip away. She reminded everyone exactly what Joy had said, calling her a useful idiot. Tulsi explained what that phrase really meant, that she was too dumb to know when she was being manipulated. And in her eyes, that was a direct insult to her intelligence, her patriotism, and her service in uniform. Her tone sharpened but stayed calm, almost surgical. She looked Joy in the eye and said, "I've been in war zones. I've stood across from men with guns who wanted me dead. You think I'm going to be rattled by a daytime talk show host lobbing recycled Cold War slurs?" The audience erupted again, louder than before. This wasn't sympathy applause, it was raw energy, a sign the crowd had fully swung to Tulsi's side. Tulsi went even further, turning the accusations back on Joy. She said people like Joy accused her of undermining democracy when all she'd ever done was ask questions the media was too afraid or too compromised to ask. She accused Joy of turning her platform into a megaphone for elite narratives, smearing anyone who dared to challenge them. By now, Joy looked exhausted. Her voice, once sharp and commanding, had dropped to a sheepish mumble. "I'm just doing my job," she said weakly. But Tulsi leaned in and snapped back. "No, Joy. Your job, if you care about truth, is to inform the public. not manipulate them, not divide them, not create cartoon villains out of people who dare to think differently. It wasn't just a clapback, it was an indictment. Live on air. Tulsi wasn't slowing down. She pointed out how Joy and her co-hosts had smeared her on live television, calling her a Russian asset, a Trojan horse, and a useful idiot. She said it plainly. That phrase implies I'm naive or lack intelligence to know what's going on. And I won't let you define me with that. The crowd erupted again, this time with a mix of applause and shouts, as if they couldn't believe how far this clash had gone. Tulsi stood her ground, repeating what she wanted the viewers at home to understand. She was a patriot. She loved her country. She was a strong and intelligent woman of color who had devoted nearly her entire adult life to keeping Americans safe and free. The attacks on September 11th were the reason she enlisted. That was who she was, not the caricature the show tried to paint. She accused Joy of convincing herself that if she repeated lies long enough, they would become truth. Maybe that trick worked on some of her audience, Tulsi said, but it didn't work on her. And judging by the reaction in the studio, the audience wasn't buying it anymore either. Joy had no response, no witty comeback, no dismissive laugh, just a shallow breath and a nervous glance at the producers. For once, the queen of the table looked cornered. And Tulsi didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't lean back like she had just won a game. Because to her, this wasn't a game, it was about demolishing lies in real time. By the time the next segment was supposed to start, the show was in chaos. The producer's schedule was shattered, the planned topics tossed aside, nobody cared about moving on. The cameras stayed locked because what was happening wasn't just another interview, it was live television history. Joy sat stiffly in her chair, blinking fast, her hands still clutching those cue cards like a shield that wasn't working. Tulsi, on the other hand, looked unshaken. Every word came out measured, controlled, but sharp enough to cut through the entire set. She leaned forward and said, "You love to preach about accountability, Joy, but the second it's turned back on you, suddenly you're the victim." The audience roared. Some clapped, others shouted, and a few even stood to their feet. Even Joy's co-hosts didn't know what to do. Some shifted uncomfortably, others just stared at the table. The control Joy had always owned at that desk had slipped away completely. Tulsi accused her of playing the same tired game. Attack, distort, discredit, and when someone finally fights back, act wounded. She stripped away the image Joy had built for years, exposing her not as a fearless truth-teller, but as part of the very establishment she pretended to challenge. In that moment, the power dynamic of the show collapsed. The untouchable host had been dethroned, not by yelling or theatrics, but by cold, undeniable truth. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.